Don't forget to like, subscribe and share the videos.
Hello all, welcome to Ganesh IAS Academy. This is the special session. In this session, we are going to discuss about the previous year UPSC Mains economic question. Let's begin the session. This question was asked in 2024, which means it's the last mains. So it is a 10 mark 150 words question. So the question is related to the inflation. What are the causes of persistent high food inflation in India? This is the first part of the question. Second part is comment on the effectiveness of the monetary policy of the RBI to control this type of inflation. First of all, you have to know why they ask these questions. So when it comes to 2024, there is a major crisis for RBI is to face this inflation, and also major issue is related to the food inflation. So when it comes in terms of food inflation, whether RBI can easily address this food inflation or not it is a biggest question mark, because when it comes to any other sectors, okay, so they can easily address that because their focus is only on the core inflation. Before all this thing, you have to know about monetary policy committee. Okay, so what is monetary policy committee? When it comes to monetary policy committee, their major focus is to control the inflation in the market. There is a window for the monetary policy committee to maintain, which is 2 to 6% of inflation. So within this mark, okay, if the inflation in the market, India's market is within this 2 to 6% means there is no issue. If it is more than 6% means the RBI need to reduce the money supply in the market. And also if the inflation is less than 2% means the RBI need to increases the money supply in the market. Why they are need to do that is, if it is more than that means it is going to affect the economy, so it will create a chaos in the economy. For example, you can't afford any essential products, so that is the major issue when it is when there is a higher inflation. So affordability will be the major question mark, and also it will create a inequality in the society. The person who are having a more money, they can get a product. So person who are not able to buy that product, they will be affected. So in that way, it is creating a inequality. Inflation is related to the inequality, but at the same time, if the inflation is less than 2%, it will demotivate the production process. So which means there is a deflation in the market, so there is a less demand in the market, so the producer, they won't produce any products. So it will affect the company's profit and also company's working environment, so it will lead to the layoff. So there will be the huge unemployment will happen if there is a deflation. So in the both the terms, when it comes to the huge inflation and also very low inflation, in terms of deflation, so both are the negative thing. To maintain that, RBI is having the monetary policy committee, so they will focus on maintaining the inflation in this 2 to 6%. In reality, inflation is not a negative one. If it is within the framework, it is a good one, because why there is inflation is there is a demand for the product. So based on the demand, the producer will know that, so there is a major demand for the product in the market, we have to increase the production process. So they will go for constructing the another plant or else opening another company. So in that terms, it will increases the employment opportunity for the society. So inflation is a good thing, but when it becoming a issue, when it is becoming a issue is if it is uncontrollably higher, then it is the major issue. Okay, so for that only they are maintaining a 2 to 6% as the inflation target, or we have to maintain that. Okay, but another concern with the RBI is they can address the issues of inflation if it is demand pull. If it is a demand pull inflation, RBI can easily reduces the inflation based on the reduction in the money supply. So why there is a huge demand for certain product is because the people is having more money. When the people are having a more money to buy a product, so they will demand it. So what they will do is they will reduce the money supply based on the controlling the repo rate in the market. So based on the repo rate, they will reduce the money supply to the bank. So the bank will reduce the money supply to the people. So in that way, they will control the money supply to overcome the issue of this demand pull inflation. Okay, so when in terms of demand pull inflation, RBI can easily, effectively control the inflation in the market. Okay, but inflation not only happens based on the demand pull. When it comes to the supply push, which means consider that there are 100 people and also there is a need for 100 apple. Okay, but at that scenario there is a issue in the weather. Okay, and also there is a flood or drought is happening. In that scenario there is only 10 apple are produced. So in that scenario there is a demand of 100 people but the supply of only 10 apple. So that is called a supply push inflation. So in that scenario, the inflation will happen and also the apple price will be increased drastically. That is called as inflation. So when it comes to the supply push inflation, if the RBI trying to address this issue, okay, so again the RBI will go for the using this MPC, using the repo rate, they will try to reduce this inflation by reducing the money supply. But here the issue is not about the increases in the money supply or increases in the demand. Here the issue of inflation is due to the supply push. So in terms of supply push inflation, the effectiveness of monetary policy to control the inflation is zero. Effectiveness is zero. The reason is it is about a supply side issue which can't be addressed by the RBI. So when it comes to the supply side issue, it can be only addressed by the government of India. So what the government of India will do is they will try to increases the import of apple. So there is a demand for 100 apple, but there is only supply of 10 apple. So what the government will do is they will import 90 apples. By the way, they will overcome the issue of the inflation. So when it comes to the supply side issue, okay, monetary policy committee can't do anything. It is about a fiscal policy. It is the government measure that can only address these kinds of issue. So this question is specifically speaking about that thing. Okay, so what are the causes of persistent high food inflation in India? Comment on the effectiveness of the monetary policy of the RBI in controlling this type of inflation. So when it comes to the persistent high food inflation, it is not about demand pull. It is not about the demand pull. It is a supply push. That is the reason. So in terms of supply push, the effectiveness of monetary policy is zero. So that is what the question is actually speaking. Why this question was asked is in uh, in the second quarter of the 2023 and also in the first quarter of 2024, there is a issue of this high food inflation. For in terms of onion, in terms of tomato, there is a high inflation happened in the market. So at that scenario, RBI tried to control this inflation based on controlling the money supply. They control with the money supply, okay, but that can't give any fruitful outcome. Okay, there is no outcome happened at that scenario. So that is the major issue. By the way, only they are asking these kinds of questions. So in terms of supply push, the monetary policy's effectiveness is zero. So to overcome this thing, the government of India have to do with it. For example, they can increases the import, okay, or else they can provide. They have to spend on the agriculture related to the weather forecasting, or else if there is a issue of any pest attack happened, so they have to spend on the fertilizer subsidies. So in that way only they can easily overcome these kinds of supply push inflation, or else there may be the supply side issue of any transportation. So for example, consider that the farmer is producing the crops, okay, so the farmer is producing the grains or any vegetables or anything, okay, but to reach that market it took around 7 days, means the obviously the crops will be destroyed. So in that scenario it is again going to affect the inflation. So what the government need to do is they have to increase the transportation facilities, quick transportation facilities, or else cold storage facilities. They have to maintain the buffer stocks. So in that way they can easily overcome the issue of the supply push inflation. So the thing here is, when it comes to the MPC, they have a limited control over these kinds of inflation, and also it is peculiar to the food inflation. When in terms of food inflation, the inflation happening in the market is mainly due to the supply side issue. It is not about the demand side issue. In that issue, in that terms, the effectiveness of the MPC is very, very, very limited. Okay, so the question is actually speaking about that issue. Okay, so first of all, in the start of the question you have to give any data like food inflation. For example, you can say that in the April month, okay, according to the CPI report, the food inflation is this much percentage, around 7%, 8%. Okay, if you know that data, it is better to give that. Okay, so start the answer with certain data. So that is the best way of answering your paper. Okay, so the food inflation was this much in in the April according to the CPI report. So you can start it. Next, the causes of the persistent high food inflation in India. First is about the government policies related to the MSP. That is also one of the major reason. So the government is continuously increasing the MSP. That is also the one of the major concern. In reality, the government is not likely to do that, but due to the pressure of the farmers, they are doing that. Okay, so next is adverse weather condition. That is also the issue. And then supply side issue. Supply side issue means it's a broader one. You can say about the transportation, or else the lack of cold storage facilities, or else due to the market scenario, or else there is not maintaining any buffer stocks, or else the issue of the hoarding or black marketing. So you can be, that can be anything. Okay, next, global market factor. So majorly all these things are connected to the supply side issue. It is not about the demand side issue. So all these issues are related to the supply side. So the high food inflation in India is majorly about the supply side issue. Okay, next. So RBI, the effectiveness of RBI is the repo rate only control the money supply, which helps in demand side of the market under the control. That is you have to give. And also next major issue is there is a mismatch between the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. Consider that the RBI is trying to reduce the inflation by controlling the money supply in the market, but at the same time what the government will do is they will increase the spending on the subsidies. So in that way it is increasing the money supply in the market. So there is a imbalance that is also leads to the food inflation. Next, RBI main focus is on the core inflation, but when it comes to the core inflation, they won't focus on the volatile commodities like food and the petrol, okay, fuel products. Okay, so next is global control. That is the major next concern. For example, RBI can control the money supply in the market. They have the only control in the domestic market. But how the RBI can control the global market? If there is a demand for the potato is increasing in the global market, obviously the people, okay, obviously the farmers, what they will do is they will export it, because they are going to make a huge profit by exporting that product. So in that scenario, how the RBI will reduces that export of that farmer? So that is also the major issue. For example, I will explain it. In domestic market, the price of a potato is selling at 10 rupees. In global market, it is 50 rupees. Okay, so obviously the farmer, what they will do is they will try to export it. So if you are going to export it, there is the reduction in the supply towards the domestic market. So domestic supply is going to reduce. That is going to lead to the issue of the inflation. So it leads to the price increase of 20 rupees, 30 rupees. In such a way, the inflation will happen. In that scenario, how the RBI can control the export of the products? So that is also the major issue. The RBI don't have any control over the export of the product. It is under the control of the parliament. So when it comes to the food inflation, the effectiveness of controlling the inflation by the RBI by using the monetary policy is very, very limited. Okay. Next, to conclude this answer, you can say that we have to give in reality, we have the answer, you can say that in the conclusion, RBI is actually a toothless tiger when it comes to the food inflation. So to give RBI some more power, their advices should be binding on the government. We have to make certain amendments related to the RBI. By the way, we have to make the toothless tiger into the toothful tiger. So which means we have to give the power to the RBI. The advisors should be binding on the government. In that way, you can conclude your answer. Okay. Thank you.